Good afternoon and welcome to the Joy Show. Joy being an acronym for Just One You. And today's show, like every show, is about honoring the individual, the authenticity, and whatever got us to where we are today, which is truly exciting. Well, as we begin, I'd like to start with our land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation and peace, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet on these sacred lands. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of the lands for thousands of years. We recognize our oneness. We realize our history. And we choose to create a new reality. We are one. Miigwech. Well, my guest today is a remarkable individual. Mel Horvath-Lucid was ordained in 2014 in the Spiritualist tradition and is a Buddhist meditation teacher and Interfaith-Spiritual Director. Mel is a healthy congregations facilitator who works with congregation through times of change, reimagining, and transition. Mel also works within a restorative justice organization and focuses on practices and ways of being that restore, repair, transform, and heal. Oh, I love all of that. Welcome, Mel Horvath. I am so grateful that you're here. It's always a joy when I get to have a conversation with you. Now, we're going to do it a little different today. We're going to talk about each other's journey, and we're going to share a little bit of writing. So you are going to start by sharing a piece of writing that you've done recently for an upcoming book. So get ready, people. There's a new one coming.
Yeah, this one's actually being published in somebody else's book. So it was a piece that was commissioned, and it's called Howling. And I wrote it about 2 years ago, actually. But when we think about the spaces of reflecting on journey, reflecting on how we got here, this was a key sort of pivotal turning point for me. Um, yeah, it's called Howling. I once feared the vastness that is me, knowing I will rise like mist from the ice-cold water, like smoke raging from the mountain fire, like wind with force enough to move an ocean quake my body, breaking the concrete of my own illusions. To find the wolf I feared emerging from within, lone, not alone, courageous. I never let them exist. Feared being seen in my own voice, chaining my paws, muting my howl. Now, somehow tenderly, slowly, I allow this wolf the world will not understand to take form. I look in the mirror, see my eyes, sorrow and joy gazing back.
Wow. That is powerful. And you wrote that 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh.
2 years ago on a 5-year ago now journey of letting go of everything that wasn't me, which turned out to be so much of me,
Yeah.
to come into a place of knowing that I would have rather died than continue to not be who I am in this world. And I was saying to you, before the show, it's like, how are you doing? And noticing right now is a time for grief, change, transition in my own life. But that grief is actually this beautiful companion and reminder to give gratitude, reminder to hold gratitude in every moment. And it's interesting when I do sort of snapshots on my life. I was having a conversation earlier today and noticing that there was sort of significant, impactful events throughout my life.
Yeah.
A sexual harm when I was 5, the
Yeah.
loss of my dad in a car accident when I was 8, the loss of my sister in a car accident when I was 10,
Oh.
the experience of a stepfather who was highly abusive for the entirety of my teen years,
Mm.
and my own journey behind that. So that isn't even what it was like to try to describe what it means to be queer in every sense of the word, from
Yeah.
the way that I saw the world, from the way that I wanted to love and interact with people, to
Yes.
how I would want to live my life, to what made sense in relationships for me. All of these things were running behind the scenes, but I was raised in with a Catholic dad and a maybe non-denominational Christian mom. But what I can tell you of the Christian mom is that church went on like 3.5 hours every Sunday. So I would go to mass for an hour, then I would switch and go to this other. And so one of the things I was highly churched, but I was highly churched in a form that was really rewarding of pretending, really rewarding of abandoning self and being this sort of thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, and so a lot of my writing really reflects on the loneliness, sadness, disconnect from my own life in trying to be this thing that I was never, and
Mm.
fearing effectively who I was. So my growing up meant that I believed those messages that I was bad, wrong, and defective, and then feared that very part of me. And so there's something about mm, realizing that we oftentimes will seek understanding from outside of ourselves,
Yeah.
but that's like almost ridiculous in what I know about me to ever think that I could hand a nice, neat little tidy box to anyone and say, and here's who I am, and it'll all make sense. And it's like, dude, I'm still figuring it out. And probably the truth is, if we're open minded, living the Zen Buddhist principle of beginner's mindset, then we're all evolving and changing. So
Always.
the curiosity is to hold with understanding who am I?
Mm.
And in that have noticed I have required less need for others to understand me. Just room for me to exist. And then a fierce, passionate desire for other people to really be able to really exist as who they
There.
are.
Ah, I love that. I love that. Oh, wow. That's really, really beautiful. And it really sort of sums up exactly what that poem was saying, of finding that wolf inside, that power, that strength, and letting it have life rather than fearing everything.
And when
Hmm.
you were talking about that wolf inside, something just sort of flashed through my being. And it was the word choicefulness. And
Mhm.
it's the moment where I recognize, hey, there's lots I wasn't responsible for
Yep,
in my
yep,
childhood, and
absolutely.
giving myself room to have had
Mhm.
those experiences, but
Yeah,
that I am responsible for what I do next. And that's not like this daunting thing. This is like I have choice.
yeah,
And these days, that voice, that howl is from this place of remembering I have choice. And the rock and a hard place decisions that I've been making over the last 5 years are
yeah,
preparing me for some of these more challenging situations I find myself in,
yeah,
because it's about locating that choicefulness within myself. How do I want to interact with what I am currently seeing, feeling, experiencing?
mhm.
and taking back my part
Yep,
for choicefulness, which seems to give me more room to be accountable and responsible then for who I am and how I am in the world. So it's really changed it down
well,
to its core.
and it makes it so that you're safe to be around. Like, for anybody to be around you, it doesn't matter, right, how they are or what they are. It's like there's a safety there as well, where people can open up to you in ways that maybe they couldn't with somebody else because you're accepting. you accept yourself, and as a result, others are acceptable also.
And definitely, if by safety what we mean is we can stay connected in the struggle and in the hard stuff,
Yeah,
then absolutely.
that's
Um,
exactly what I mean. We can just walk
yeah,
that bumpy road with all the hills, and find ways to be compassionate and accepting and respectful, and just honoring that we each are going to walk it a little different.
I appreciate you saying that because I know that you know what that means. And I have noticed more and more, quote, safe spaces being what I would call sterile spaces, where
True.
it gets so controlled. We're going to make sure we check every single word to get the word right, to do the thing. And it's that again is giving our power out rather than being able to say, oh, here's what I mean when I use that word. Here's the meaning I've given that.
Yeah.
Here's the value I've placed on that. And so for me, I used to say, I don't believe in safe spaces, and I guess fundamentally I don't, meaning that if what we want to do is avoid feeling the entirety of our emotions, then step away from relationship because you will inevitably feel the entirety of your emotion, and some of those you may view as an unpleasant experience. But that's the robustness of life.
Hmm.
And so for me, it's been able to articulate, if by safe you mean sterile, I'm good, I'm going to pass. I don't want to
Yeah,
come out and play here. And
because
if
it's not
by
safe at all.
that's right,
It's a
the
fake thing.
perception, you got the illusion of safe takes
Yeah,
over. And then we're not real at all. And even frankly, to be honest with you, before this call today,
yeah,
I noticed myself just self talking. Sometimes before I deliver a talk, I remind myself just to speak from the heart, offer freely, with
yeah.
that sort of take what works for you, leave what doesn't sort of approach. And this one, I just kept saying to myself, it's okay, be real. Just be real.
Mm, I love
Just
that.
be real.
That's it. That's the key to creating a beautiful life, is to just be you.
Yeah,
Because
which is then inherently messy, to say the
always,
least.
yeah. And being in that mess is okay too, because we all go there. We all have our moments of whatever, where we make mistakes or step in it, and I've stepped in it lots of times.
Yeah.
But it's just like being responsible for it and not defensive about it, I think is really important as well. That, I know I've said things from the pulpit that have come out of my mouth, and then I'm like, oh, I wish I could pull that back,
Yeah.
but it's out there. And then when somebody comments on it, it's like, wow, you're absolutely right. That was inappropriate. I shouldn't have said that. Um, and then to allow them to share, it creates a respectful place for them to share their feelings, that I don't have to defend that, oh, I did it because, and ignore what they're going through, but allowing that process to happen. I think it does get messy, but I think it's important to just speak the truth, and yeah, and do it quickly, whatever your truth is.
My Wi-Fi disconnected. How unfortunate.
Yeah.
I got to, I heard parts and then I missed unfortunately a
Um, and who knows what I said, because I have no
piece.
idea.
What I do remember, or where it did leave off, is those moments where people are willing to correct, to name, to check. And
Yes.
I notice myself that those are the moments where it isn't about having said the perfect thing or the right word, but it is about ownership and responsibility and accountability to be able to say, thank you for that. And here's what I meant to say. And an example for me
Yeah.
um, was that I was in a conversation with somebody else, and I was talking about why I believe it's important to have representation.
Mhm.
And the person, from their experience, uh, was concerned rightfully about what it means to tokenize, right? Hey, we need this amount of people to meet this goal, right? And so it becomes this outer metric. And those things look the same, right? Representation, there's a mix of people here. Tokenization, there's a mix of people here, but the intention, the energy behind it is different. And so this person expressed and said to me, I'm just concerned that you're tokenizing. And it wasn't that's tokenizing, it was your tokenizing.
Mm,
And because I knew from where I was speaking and what I meant to say,
yep.
I remember that it was one of the few times where I was able to start to respond instead of react and to validate in the process. And it looked something like this. I said, "You're right. Tokenization is a thing.
Yeah.
What I am talking about right now is representation." And I drew on the best story I can. And usually it's children's stories and things like that, or
Yeah.
myth. But I said, it's kind of like when Tigger finds out that Tigger isn't the only Tigger and that there's other Tiggers out there. And I said, that's from where I speak. I want to be able to know that somebody doesn't feel alone. I've been the only Tigger in a space, and
Yep.
frankly, it can really suck. And that um, it isn't actually about having all Tiggers, though. It's about the other animals being able to see and value. And I think in
You
I'm
froze.
concerned I'm frozen, so I'm not sure if people are hearing me. But in that way, Winnie the Pooh does a good job of not being the same as Tigger,
Yeah.
but making room for all things that are Tigger. And so it
Oh,
wasn't the sameness that does that, but rather the acceptance and the awareness and the invitation to be who you are in this space.
mm,
And so I think when we can know from where we speak, know what our intention is,
yes.
and also be able to respond to concerns, because those are real, particularly in spaces of
Mm,
exclusion. Um,
yeah.
yeah, so it's the word piece is important, but I would suggest that it is us ourselves that must know and understand why we are speaking, what we are saying, and have the capacity to communicate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm going to share my poem now. The poem I wrote it about 30 years ago as I began the journey of ministry. And it was just a download. Took like 2 seconds to write, I think. And it was interesting, when I look at it now, because I'm really surprised, um, because it really was about how I couldn't see me. Uh,
Mm.
so the poem is called I See. I see a warm and loving soul filled with kindness, beauty to behold, and yet it is denied. I see strength beneath the shell, and yet weakness prevails. I see so much of what must be, and yet I try to communicate this view I hold, and it's disbelieved. I see you, friend, with loving eyes, the eyes that cannot lie. I see you, friend, powerful and strong. I see you, friend, beautiful and kind. I see you, friend, warm and true. Why is it you cannot see it too? I see the story of lives long past, but what can they mean? History to be viewed, remembered. We learn from history. I see the pain of dreams bypassed. I see the wishes that dwindled to ash. I see the hopes you no longer believe. The answer, my friend, is in your eyes. If only you could face your fear and see. The greatest fear of all is the fear of what will set us free. I see you, my friend, with loving eyes, the eyes that cannot lie. Turn your sight within and view with loving eyes. You too will see the beauty that lies within you. And at the time that I wrote that, it didn't land. But when I read it a little while ago, I went, yeah, I couldn't see me. And yet there was a part of me trying to tell me who I really was, but I still couldn't see it.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I'm like, and then I was the writer of writing it. I was writing it to me, and at the time it didn't land, and it's like,
It
damn.
did not land. It totally lands now. I look at it and go, oh my gosh. It was like this part of me going, here's what I see. Here's what I see. How about you stop ignoring it? But it's funny how life is like that. And for me, growing up and trying to find my way in the world, because as a queer woman, I couldn't accept that. I didn't have language for it. I didn't have an understanding for it. I'm 67 years old, and when I was 8 and 9 and 10 years old, or 12 and 14, it's like I didn't know that loving a woman was a thing. Because in my world, it's like you meet a man and you get married. So I did that a bunch of times. You meet a man, you get married, and you hope it works. And then you wonder why it doesn't. Well, there were some clues there. But, ultimately, I couldn't see me for the strengths that I do possess. I couldn't see me for the value that I hold. And I see that in many of the people that I counsel and whatnot, is that they're living from that hurt place, that injured victim place of, living from the shoulds. My parents said I should be this, I should do that, I should. Teachers, friends, relatives, all the people who should on us. And what I realized is that until we are willing to be authentic and messy, 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 that's when things finally start to land, and there's a peacefulness and a joyfulness about that. Like I'm happier than I've ever been in my life, and it only took me 65 years to get here. But I'm here now, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm finding compassion for myself, and honesty, and being willing to actually be seen in the world, which is brand new.
Yeah, a couple of things I noticed when I couldn't help but laugh, because that is sort of the pain in writing sometimes. Like, I will write something and look back and go, either, damn, that sounds good. Like, who wrote that? Oh shit, I did. Or write something and be like, yeah, I don't know what that even means. And then allow it to work on me over time. Though there
It
is
does. Yeah.
um, just sort of the principle of everything is created twice, first in our mind, and then it manifests, that there is that moment or that spiraling where a part of you or a piece of you knew
Yeah.
and claimed that. And then it's the journey sort of inward to pick up the pieces, so to speak, the other aspect of self that don't yet realize.
Exactly.
Wait, friend, and what would it look like to treat ourselves with the same sort of care and cherishedness of maybe a newborn baby, right?
Yeah.
Like, to hold that tenderly,
That space.
to be with those pieces of ourselves, the mess, the beauty, the challenges, the pain, the grief, the joy, all of it with this tenderness that was missing for a lot of my life, but that it would be really challenging. I see now, the moment where you said to me, and then you became a safe person for people to be around, and I articulate that again as safe to be able to struggle and stay connected.
Mhm.
But I also give myself empathy for the ways that I would have missed, that me not seeing me would in turn mean that I will not see the world around me, right? The quote that I don't want to quote wrong, but I might, but it's like, we do not see the world as it is, we see the world as we are.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so that distance from seeing self with care and compassion, like almost as though that's a first measurable for how I might be experiencing the world around me, is am I experiencing myself with care and compassion right now?
Exactly. And that's really crucial. And a lot of people are not there. Our world is in pain at the moment, I think. There's lots of disruption. And I think that learning to really accept ourselves as we are, to let go of the stories we were told, and to come to a place of understanding our real self, and to be able to love the way we are, but also to look at what was done to us. You know, my parents would say things that were quite harmful, but I know that most of what they did, they were only trying to do the best they could from what they knew. And for me in my healing journey, I've had to sort of disassociate from like the word mom and what a hallmark mom is or supposed to be, to the reality of what a mom actually is, even in my own experience of mothering, and to be forgiving and loving and accepting of the journey that I've walked. And it has allowed me to be loving and accepting and more compassionate with the errors that my parents made, so that I could give up any form of resentment that I might hold, because that can only harm me. And so it's like finding ways to just be loving and compassionate rather than hateful or, you know, they did this to me. I'm not a victim. I know that. And that's a friend of mine years ago said, there are no victims, there's only volunteers. And I thought, yeah, I volunteered for a lot of stuff in this lifetime. And now I'm willing to look at it from a new vantage point, which is really exciting. So this journey is fascinating, you know, where we come from and where we get to. And, you know, as much as I could, you know, I could love out here, but it was hard for me to love in here. And that's been this journey of trying to figure out who I am without worrying about what other people think.
Hmm. Yeah, if I was going to title this episode something, I would call it something like "Loving the Mess," because because that's what I hear us both talking about
Loving
seriously.
the mess. I
And
like
I
that. I love it.
think about how terrified I was to make a mistake, to say the wrong thing, to not know, to you know, to be wrong. All of these pieces that
Yeah.
would then mean that I wasn't showing up. Fear
Yeah.
was winning, right? So I wasn't showing up. And yet it was the inner work of going to the mess that is human experience,
Yeah.
the struggle that is human experience, and finding heaps of connection there,
Yeah.
heaps of myself there, and then the capacity to meet that mess with care and compassion. But it sounds so simple that we skip over it and we think it must be more complex. But I am finding that the most restorative practices are the simplest.
Mm.
They're
Yeah.
just very challenging to apply, right? To apply compassion to mess, to apply care to a misstep, to
Yeah.
apply curiosity to pain. Ah, oh, I can feel that
Mm.
hit in my body. Curiosity to pain. Who wants to feel pain? And yet again, if we think Cahill Gabron talks about love and pain, inseparable, joy and sorrow, inseparable. Uh,
Inseparable.
yeah, and he even says that, you know, if you don't want to feel the full expansiveness of love or the depths of pain, step out of the threshold then, and you will not cry all your tears and you will not laugh all your laughter. You will not know the fullness that is life.
You have to do it all. You have to be with it
Right.
all. Yeah. Yeah. That's the avoidance. I remember years ago doing a talk in Lake Louise, Alberta, and talking to a group of women. And it was like talking about the idea of, you know, allowing for positive emotion, but not negative emotion, and how that in fact means that we cannot have either. Like we're in this place in the middle that is a nothingness. And I think there's a lot of people who live there, but is it really living when we're kind of putting in time rather than allowing ourselves full expression and finding a way to just be with all of it, which is ultimately a key to freedom and joy and love and all the good stuff. We're going to take a commercial break. I hate to interrupt
Wow.
this, but On this note, we'll be right back. You're watching The Joy Show here on the New Thought Media Network. So please don't go away. We will be back in just a minute with more with Mel and Barbara Jean.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hepperlin Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
And we're back with The Joy Show and my guest, Mel Horvath-Lucid. And we've been having a great conversation about life on planet Earth, at least from our perspective. How we do it. The journey, I think some of the stuff that I've done over the years, I look at and I go, wow, that was so simple. And yet it was the hardest thing I ever did. Like living in the mess is not easy. It takes courage and a willingness to, be in it.
It's interesting too, because we have really a kind of a quest right now for what is real, right? What is real? And I noticed that is really, really an interesting question, because in some ways we have very simple values that could invite us into questions. For example, is the way that I'm operating right now demonstrating dignity and worth to myself and to others? And is what does compassion look like for me right now? What would compassion, and again, I noticed the big change in both our journeys was not actually external. It was the moment we applied true compassion, real powerful, potent medicine compassion inward to those parts of ourselves that we maybe were overtly, definitely for me, overtly told bad, wrong, and defective. The parts of me that that I knew society said, and definitely my upbringing said, can't exist, but I knew they were there. So what do I do with them? And there's something I remember Rev Sharon Ketchum.
Yes.
I was writing a talk, and I was writing about the sort of Cherokee parable about the grandson talking to his grandfather about the two wolves. And the
Yes.
one wolf sort of has all these desirable qualities, and the other, has maybe like qualities like jealousy and ego and all of these things. And the moral of that story is what happens to what one won the fight. And the grandfather says, well, it's the one you feed.
Yes.
And it's an important message, but the talk I ended up writing at the time, which is a lot of years ago now, but I notice it's relevant both to the poem I've shared and the conversation we've been having, is, wait, what happens to the other wolf? And it's like, well, if we're pushing it down, if we're dismissing, if we're distancing ourselves from that, we can never look at what is really, and we can't actually own those pieces or examine them and then figure out what about that. And for me, an example of where that's been most practically applied in my life is around experiences I would have with anxiety. And I would notice anxiety, which feels like tightness in my body, rapid thought, rapid movement of the body, increased blood pressure. I can almost take myself there now, feeling it. And then I would feel this sense of anxiety, and then I would get anxious about the anxiety. Oh no, it's happening again. And when I started to grow my capacity to be with what was, I started to be like, giving little aspects of me character. So baby anxiety looks like this like big blue-eyed, sort of round, kind of opaque, crystally ball of a being.
Yeah.
And I was like, how can I be mad or afraid of that little dude? Right. So has this and baby anger looks really cute too. But asking, hey, anxiety, what is it that's going on for you? Like, what wisdom are you holding? And at least on that particular day, its wisdom was talking about, awareness around how we care for the earth, and awareness for how that impacts. And it was like giving myself room to just have that experience and to be like, yeah, those are really valid and important things, little anxiety. And right now we're walking our dog. Breathing fresh air. And I'm grateful for the grass, and I'm grateful for this body, and I'm grateful for the ability to be able to even ask the question of, who are you, anxiety, and what are you about? And I'm grateful for my dog's little cute bum. He runs down the street with his little tail wagging, and we allow more of it to be there. Those feelings, I didn't dismiss them. They weren't gone. They were there. I'm still concerned. Aware that how we treat one another and the earth matters. But it was allowing me to practice something else, which is that gratitude came in and breath came in and held. And that's where, our practices that bring us into presence are so important. We can be with more of what is, all at the same time. That movie, Anything Everywhere All at Once. It's that kind of thing, to be able to be with more all at the same time.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I've worked with and shared with a lot of people is every part of us is essential. Every part of us is, leading us somewhere, awakening us to something, empowering us in some way. Like, everything matters. And when we try to push something down, a little bit like a pressure cooker, eventually it's going to blow up. That can't be held forever. There's going to be something that's going to squeak out that isn't going to be what we want. And I think, and I think of the yin yang symbol, because it's the mix of the white and the black, and the two together. It's like all of it forms the whole. And I think that's been a big part of my journey, is going, being gay is okay. It just is what is. It's not good or bad or right or wrong. It simply is. Being a divorcee, yeah, so what? Tried it, didn't work, tried again, didn't work, tried again. It's like there's something about being compassionate about that and accepting that, like we were talking earlier, and you said, well, at least when something needs to end, you let it end. And that I did. And, there was question. I remember filling out a passport application with all my different last names. I handed it to the guy, and he looked at me and he went, "You're kidding, right?" And I said, "No." And he went, "That's hilarious." He said, "I've never seen anything like this." And then he told me I didn't have to do that because I didn't actually change my birth certificate. So I didn't have to write them all down. But it was like just that funny moment and interchange, because he had a good chuckle about it, not a judgmental looking at me with cross eyes, but rather like, "Oh my gosh, this is hysterical. You need more blanks to fill this in." And we had a good laugh. And I think there's something about allowing ourselves to, as we feel what we've been feeling and experience maybe our shame around whatever, to at some point in time kind of embrace it and look at it like, it is a little child that just needs a big hug and lots of love. And being able to have that chuckle really helped to diminish sort of the shame I felt about all those marriages that didn't work. And I've been married 22 years now, so this one seems to be sticking.
Well, and didn't work is context
Exactly.
specific,
It worked
right?
perfectly. Yeah.
I was having a conversation recently about just living the possibility of what would it look like to move, and where would I want to move. And
Mm.
I said, I don't think that's actually the question. I think the question is, what else do I want to experience in this life?
Ah, yes.
And that becomes a completely different question, because then where I'm living would be serving that desire towards, like, that desire piece leading. This
Yes.
is what I desire to experience, and maybe that is a specific type of community living. Maybe that is being really near to certain elements, or family members. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's seeing that we desire to have that experience,
Wow.
and or that I'd be curious about if there was other, imagining into the space of what it looks like to think about what life lessons we're meant to learn, however people form that belief system
Yeah.
of it, what am I here to learn, right? And so in many ways, again, when we remove this good, bad, right, or wrong, though I maintain being gay is pretty fantastic. So I
I'm with
mean,
you
there's
on
that
that
piece,
one.
right? And queerness is one of the most vibrant aspects. And I understand from where you're speaking, which is when we've been taught something is bad, wrong, and defective, to be able to say this is simply an aspect. And
Yeah.
then we can choose to cultivate the meaning. But it is where we have such a strong charge
Yeah.
about something for ourselves, and then also noticing why we seem to be so involved in other people's business and
Oh,
not minding our own, right? So there's some metrics there, but yeah, this idea of what else is it I want to experience in my life,
I
and then
love.
what goals am I setting to move in that direction. It's a very different way of looking at life or making a decision. And I
Yeah.
notice it takes us beyond knowing what it is we enjoy.
Yeah.
It takes us into this place of being willing to feel into desire.
Mm,
And
I love that.
yeah, the difference between sometimes knowing, for example, that when I was first I'm significantly better. I mentioned some of my life journey at the beginning. I'm significantly better as a result of navigating challenging times or grief. I'm learning how to plant joy as a practice
Mm,
within my life, and to allow more room for joy,
yeah.
particularly when things are challenging. So, hey, it's really challenging right now. I'm going to purposefully and intentionally plant and allow joy, because this thing's going to be challenging anyway. So, what do I want to hold it in?
Yeah.
And that joy, for me, looked at first very mechanical, which is very cute, because I thought I was really getting it. And so in my calendar, I'd put something every single day that I knew I enjoyed and give that to myself. And then I
Uh,
started seeing a new therapist, and my therapist said to me, "Oh, that's really awesome. That's the first step." And I remember being like, what, the first step? Like here, I thought I was mastering some sort of a thing. And she says, now the next step is to maybe even get curious about what you desire. And then noticing I would have something like, have a cup of tea. And I'd be like, I don't think I want a cup of tea right now, though.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you desire?
Mm.
And then it would end up being, I want to go for a walk. I just want to look at this tree. I want to write. I want to create. I want to hug. I want to call my son. I want to talk to my friend. I want to, like tonight, dress up as a witch, which doesn't take much dressing for me. Just go out as myself and hang out with other people, doing ritual around looking at loved ones we've lost and making meaning. Whatever it is that we desire, to move towards that feels more open, more fluid. And in those ways, then it moves us back into that place of choicefulness again,
Mm-hmm.
to feel both moved and moving, rather than obligated or expected, which definitely for a lot of the life kind of roles and responsibilities I was given, they never made sense to me. So they just felt like expectations and obligations. And I was incredibly unhappy because I wasn't me.
Yeah, and that is the result of living from the shoulds. Everybody said who we should be and why we're broken and flawed, and we believed them. And
Yeah.
we were young when we were told those things, so of course we believed them. Little children look at their parents as God. They see all, know all, and they're everywhere present. So kind of describes God. And so for me, I wasn't raised with religion, which I'm really grateful for.
That's really interesting considering where you landed. Tell me about that.
Well, it's fascinating because my mom was Christian, but my dad was agnostic. He left the church when he was about 16, going, this is a bunch of BS and everybody are hypocrites. So he left the church. And when he married my mom, he very quickly got her out of the church. She was with the Salvation Army. And so she wasn't, we were too busy. We weren't allowed to go to church or do all that kind of thing. So I think I went, a couple times with friends when I was little. But it was like, I don't really believe any of this. And as I was journeying along, like I always believed in some power. What I didn't believe in was all of the rules and regulations and all the stuff that the churches were saying, and how some people can be saved and others can't. Like all of it seemed a bit ridiculous to me, frankly. And then when I was 27, my mother-in-law at the time, that I really wanted her to like me, so she invited me to go to church on a Sunday night, and I was like, yeah, I can endure an hour. Maybe she'll like me after this. It was a really great way to go to church. And while I was there, I have no idea what happened, but it's like I walked in complete darkness and I walked out like lit up. It's like what I knew in that moment was God as love, as this all-encompassing energy of possibility. And it just filled me. And then, so I started attending that church, but that's not what they were teaching.
Mm.
And so I was there for about a year and a half, and I'm like, I would ask the pastor certain things like, what do you mean that the rabbi's going to hell? Like none of this is making sense to me. And I left, and then I found the Center for Spiritual Living, which allowed me to begin to look at life from a new vantage point. And I found Unity right around the same time, the two of them. And the journey for me from there was to begin to heal those parts, but to bring myself together, which has taken some time. And lots of people have left my life as a result, because I think that happens as you begin to journey in a new way. Some people will go, some people will come. But I found this belief that there is something in the universe that creates it all, and that is good, that we live, move, and have our being in it. We're all connected. And I think of us all being connected. And I think, well, if I do something to you, I've actually done it to myself. So how is that valuable? So learning to really check in and double check, especially when I'm really uncomfortable. Because sometimes, I'm in a position where I'm really uncomfortable and I don't know what to say or how to be. And it's like taking a breath and going, I need to be me. And what does that look like? You're just taking that moment to sit in the messiness or in the discomfort, and then to allow it to be whatever it is. And sometimes it's really hard. And then sometimes it's so beautiful the way it moves, just by that willingness to pause and take time to listen or to observe what's going on, and then surrender into it and see where that goes. And it's been healing for sure, but it's been wonderful to simply sit in the mess.
I like it because we've to break down some of the themes that I've heard today,
Yeah.
Being authentic and real, particularly when that authenticity and real is at odds with what the world said should on. And then the being with the mess, and not only being with the mess, loving it. To compassionately hold what it is, that which is, to compassionately hold that which is. And then the sit in incredible discomfort. And then when you find yourself in discomfort, I really appreciated when you said, and now lean in, right? And I think about discomfort as fear and leaning in instead of moving back. And then I think, it's really, really challenging to sell these practices, because they're all quite simple but challenging,
Very
and they
challenging.
require embodiment. But what I will say is this: the payoff for me has been something that was otherwise so incredibly elusive.
Yes.
And I've done nothing for it. It simply exists because of the practices, which is peace. And it isn't that the world itself is any kinder out there than it was before. It isn't that I navigate the world more perfectly than I once did, or elegantly, or anything else. It is simply that I know that it's okay for me to be with what is and to be with myself as I am, and that I genuinely believe in my capacity to own my own and to take accountability and responsibility.
That's beautiful.
To be with it, and that there's something peaceful about that.
Yeah.
There's something peaceful about that. So meeting the rest of myself means I can meet more of what is around me and not crumble, to break open instead.
Oh, that's beautifully said. Beautifully said. I love that. Yeah, because that's the journey, right? To find our voice and share it. I think one of the things for me is I really believe every single person is unique and special. And that uniqueness, that we come into this world with some little something that's unique to us, that we are meant to give into the world at this time. And that's our purpose. And that doesn't mean we have a job that matches it. It just means that in our day-to-day, moment by moment experiences of what is, we allow ourselves to fully be present as best we can, because some days we're not, but to do it as best we can, and to really know that I have a uniqueness about me, you have a uniqueness about you, and your uniqueness doesn't diminish mine, and mine doesn't diminish yours. And so all of us can be our glorious selves without ever doing harm to someone else. I think that's something that, I hear in the young people that my daughter hangs with, that, they feel they have to do certain things in a certain way to please their parents. And I get that because I did the same thing, but I'm thinking, man, this is 2024 and our children are still coming from that same idea, I have to do this and I have to do this and I have to do it this way. And when I ask them, what do you want to do with your life or what kind of work are you interested in? 9 times out of 10, they have no idea, but they're going to university anyway. And it's like, I don't understand that. I do understand getting an education. I think it's a beautiful thing. I love learning. And at the same time, I don't get building a huge debt when you haven't got a clue where you want to go or what you want to do, and you're trying to appease somebody else.
Yeah, what was running through my head is nothing that is meant for you will ask you to abandon yourself.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love, oh my gosh. I gotta spend more time talking to you.
Yeah, so when we sit with those moments, it's again, I oftentimes ask, where's my choicefulness right now? It's particularly the rock and hard spots places. And then it's also, is this thing somehow asking me to compromise who I am at my core? Because those things meant for me will not ask me to abandon myself. And that is, again, another reclamation of the hard ass work of being real, is to come to the place of saying, hey, I got me now. I got me now, and compassionately and with love and care.
Yeah.
We've never hated ourselves to health yet, though it's amazing that we keep applying that practice. So, what does it mean to pick up compassion and care over and over, to return over and over to that?
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. I remember as a child watching war movies and not understanding the insanity of it, that adult human beings could actually go to war thinking they would arrive at peace. I'm sorry, can't work. Hasn't worked in how many years have we been on the planet doing the same thing over and over again? That bit of insanity, I think, living authentically, finding our joy, being who we are, is actually what would prevent all of that killing.
It would change something, that's for sure.
It certainly would. Well, final thought. Do you have a final thought you'd like people to take away today? You've said so many great ones, but
I'd repeat, the nothing that is meant for you is going to ask you to abandon yourself. So the moment that you feel like you do, take back your choice and do something else.
Oh, I love that. And a friend of mine used to say, what's meant for you will not go past you. So if you didn't find it today, you will find it at some point. It's going to find you. And it's interesting how that works. Well, this has been fabulous. Mel, you are truly a joy to have on the show. And I know that everything said here today is going to impact people's lives as well. And you've impacted mine in a very positive way, as usual. So thank you so much. Thank you all for watching. Please be sure, like, share, and subscribe. And with this, share. This is a great message. It needs to get out there. So share it with everybody. And be sure to come back again next week when we're going to do it all over again with another guest. And I just hope that it's as wonderful as today. I'm sure it will be. Thank you for watching. You're watching Joy Show on the New Thought Media Network, and we are so grateful that you do. And Mel, thank you again. Asia, thank you for producing, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network, come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.